I hear you say this all the time. Mixed media is too hard. I want to do mixed media, but I don't know where to start. I just wanted to let you know that I heard you, and I don't want you to feel like that anymore. So today, I thought I'd share with you my behind-the-scenes secrets to creating mixed media projects. These 6 simple steps will help you get started so you can gain the confidence to create on your own. I've broken it all down for you with simple instructions, so let's get started. This step is often the most confusing for people. To prime or not to prime? That is the question. Priming means adding a base coat to our surface to prepare the background, similar to the way we do before painting a wall. In art, we use gesso. Whether it's a canvas, paper, or another substrate, when in doubt, it's always recommended to prime your surface with gesso, even if it doesn't need it, because it doesn't hurt either. In my case today, priming will be my second step, as the first thing I'm doing is gluing some collage papers onto my background. If you're gluing paper onto a surface first, you don't really need to prime it beforehand. Nothing happens if you do, but there's no point as you're covering it with the paper. In my case, I'm using my own downloadable collage sheets from Etsy. One of the biggest things I often hear from people is, I don't know where to start. So I thought I'll make this step easier for you by creating these collage sheets. They come in a variety of colors and designs, as I've scanned my actual artwork for you to use. The sheets come in sets of 5, so there's lots to choose from, and they are purchased as a digital file, so you can print them at home in any size. They take away the frustration of not knowing where to start. I printed one of my neutral collages on an 8.5 by 11 sized paper and glued it onto the canvas using some matte gel medium. It is literally like pasting and gluing, the way we used to do in kindergarten. Just add a thin layer of gel medium onto the canvas and glue the paper. Matte gel medium is a high quality glue that dries matte and clear, so you can collage with it. I highly recommend you getting yourself a good quality medium like this one. Now this part is very important. Make sure you seal the paper with a coat of gel medium. Since paper is very thin and gets damaged by wetness, it will protect the paper from any other products you add on top. And one more important thing. Since in mixed media we work in layers, each layer we add needs to be fully dried before adding the next one. So having a heat tool is super helpful. Now it's time to prime the background, as the gelled surface is very slippery. By adding gesso, we give the background some grit, so when we add the paint, it sticks to it. If you didn't add papers in the background, then this would have been your first step. I'm using white gesso, which I'm diluting with water to create a white wash. Then I apply a thin layer of this white wash onto the whole background. I'm diluting the gesso because I don't want to cover the design in the background. You can also use clear gesso for this step as well. Once I whitewash the whole background, I use a sponge brush to add the gesso directly onto the edges of the canvas. I'm using undiluted gesso here, as this helps hide and blend the paper edges. And here's a tip for you. If you don't have white gesso, I have a simple formula you can make at home. I will link the video down below in the description. One of my favorite ways to add texture to a project is by using a stencil. I would say I'm a little stencil obsessed, as there's so many designs to choose from, and they give the most amazing 3D texture. Choose your favorite stencil and use some modeling paste to apply through it onto the background. I'm just using an old plastic card to apply it, and I'm not adding it everywhere. You can also use a palette knife or a silicone brush to apply as well. If you don't have modeling paste, you can thicken up the same homemade gesso I mentioned before and use it as a paste. This layer might take a little longer to dry, but make sure it is fully dried. In mixed media, we work in layers, and so it is as if we're building and creating a story. We start with the foundation and build up just like building a house. It requires a lot of patience, but it also brings a lot of gratifying results. Color theory can seem complicated, but it needs to be understood. However, it usually needs a video on its own. So let me make it simple for you. Choose just 2 colors of acrylic paint. Yes, only 2. By choosing just 2 colors, you avoid messing up and getting muddy brown on your background. I chose blue and green, but I encourage you to choose your favorites. I'm using liquid acrylics, which are very fluid, but if you don't have liquid acrylics, then you can just dilute the ones you have with a little bit of water. I find it easier to add a little bit of color at a time, and I always start with the lightest color first. In this case, it's the lime green. I use a paintbrush and add it to the edges of my canvas. Then I spray water on it to dilute the paint even more. It creates a very faint organic wash that fades away as it moves towards the middle of the canvas. The water helps to avoid unwanted paint strokes and lines. If paint runs where you don't want it, you can always wipe it off with a little wipe. Once I add the light color, I continue with my second paint and repeat the same process. The paints will blend together in some areas while remain intact in others. I want to have the darker color on the outside because it gives it more balance and definition. This is the part where we add the main focal image to our canvas. There are lots of options for this step, but I tried to make it as simple as possible. I printed and cut a butterfly image from the internet so I can trace it. You can also die cut an image or draw it freehand. I chose to trace it onto one of my collage papers because the design was already there. To make the butterfly sturdier, I glued the collage print onto an old cardboard mail envelope with the same matte medium I used at the beginning. This is a great way to use recycled materials that otherwise would go in the garbage. Make sure you seal the paper as well, like we did before. Once it's dried, I cut the butterfly and glued it to the canvas. I only glued the middle as I wanted the wings to move. I even added a small metal embellishment in the middle of the butterfly. Although this is the last step, it is by far the most important, as it ties all the previous steps together in a cohesive art project. So make sure you watch till the end to see all the options. There are many different types of finishing touches, but I will share with you the ones I use the most, starting with splatters. I love adding splatters because they look so organic and give a sense of movement. I took some black gesso and diluted with water. Then I splattered it around the canvas. I covered the butterfly with a template as I didn't want to get the splatters onto it. If you make a mistake, you can always clean it up with a wipe, and you can use black paint here as well. I also added some markings using the same black paint and the plastic card. This technique is super simple. You dip the edge of the card into the paint and then create lines. I kept the lines close to the edges of my canvas as it creates inward movement. The lines should be of different heights and going in different directions, so it looks like a grid. I love this technique as it gives it so much character. The next finishing touch is adding borders. I love adding borders to my projects as it defines everything. I painted a black border around the whole canvas with a thin paintbrush, and then added a thin border around the butterfly as well. If your canvas has thick edges, take this time to paint the edges black as well. I even painted the calligraphy nib in the middle of the butterfly in black. Now we're in the home stretch, and if you choose, you can glue a meaningful sentiment to the canvas. I chose one from my printable art phrases, which are also available on Etsy. And once I glued it, I outlined it with black as well. There are so many finishing touches that can be added to our artwork, like drawing some white lines like I did here to complement the black ones, as it brings some highlights to the piece. Or like using a script stamp to add some texture to the butterfly. As you continue to experiment with techniques, you will get a sense of what finishing touches you love the most. But in the meantime, I've compiled a series of creative practices for you in this video right here. I believe that learning many mixed media techniques can expand not only your knowledge, but will help you create with the artistic confidence you desire. Join me in this video right here and learn some more.